Okay, so today we are going to be solving quadratic functions and equations from vertex form. Okay, so you should have already done solving quadratics from standard form by either factoring or using the quadratic formula. Okay, so just as a reminder, when you're being told to solve anything, we're talking about quadratic functions, linear functions, whatever, what you're looking for really is the x-intercept. Okay. And if you're looking for the x-intercept, that means y has to equal 0. Okay. So, and again, that qualifies for any function or any equation. Anytime you're actually solving for a variable in an equation, if you were to graph that same equation on a coordinate plane, you'd be looking for the x-intercept or intercepts because most of the time we have 2 on quadratics. Okay. So, how do we do this? This is what vertex form looks like. Well, first, obviously, we have to make y equal 0. Okay. And then we're going to have to do some inverse operations, right? And in order to get rid of the k that's on the end, you're either going to have to add or subtract. You're going to have to either multiply or divide if a is a fraction, which we have had, to get rid of the a. And then the big thing here is with the squared. So you need to remember that the opposite of a squared, and you're going to have to do this every single time, is to square root. Okay, and I need to make a side note on this because when we take the square root of something, there are actually 2 possible answers. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. The square root of 4, you're going to tell me, okay, well, that's 2 because 2 times 2 equals 4. All right, well, think about your integer rules. What is negative 2 times negative 2? Right, that also equals 4. So the square root of 4 actually has 2 answers. It is both positive 2 and negative 2. And we're going to have to keep that in mind when we are solving. We're going to have to write our equation twice when we get to that square root step. All right, so let's go ahead and go through the steps. Okay, so as I stated, step 1 is to make your y equal 0 because we are looking for the x-intercepts. All right, so 0 equals 2 times x minus 3 squared minus 8. And we've said this before, when you're solving equations, most of the time I tell you, the easiest steps to take is usually to do PEMDAS backwards. So that means you would take care of addition and subtraction first, multiplication and division second, your exponent, which is going to be what you're going to have to do for your square root, third, and then whatever's in your parentheses last. And it actually works quite nicely, specifically for vertex form. All right, so in this case, since I have to add or subtract first, I am going to add 8 to both sides to get rid of the 8 on the end. Okay, so I've showed that I'm doing the same step on both sides. I now have that because negative 8 and positive 8 is a 0 pair, right? So we're going to add or subtract first. Okay, so then we're going to take care of multiplying or dividing. So this 2 is multiplying this whole function, right? So I'm going to divide in this case. But if it was a fraction, remember, we don't divide by fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So this is why it's either a multiplication or division step. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2. Okay, and that's going to get me 4. Dividing by 2, the only thing that's going to do is cancel the multiplying by 2 that's in front, right? It's not going to touch that squared because right now this is actually still a squared term. All right, so I'm going to take care of my exponent, which means I'm going to need to square root. So this is where I was talking about where you're going to get 2 different answers, right? If I square root both sides of this equation, right, square rooting is just going to get rid of that squared term. So what I really have is just x minus 3 here. But like I said before, the square root of 4 isn't just 2. It's also negative 2. So you actually have to rewrite the equation twice. So make a note to yourself on that one. Star it, heart it, underline it, highlight it, do something so that you remember to write the equation twice, once for the positive and once for the negative answer. All right, and then we're going to take care of the parentheses last, because basically what we have is x minus 3. So now I'm just going to add 3 to both sides of my equation to get x by itself. And this is going to work on both sides. I'm going to have to add 3. All right, so now I have my step. I got to go ahead and simplify it. So now that I've showed my work. So I'm going to get x is equal to 5. And over here, I'm going to get x is equal to 1. And those are going to be my x-intercepts. Okay, so again, we're going to rewrite y as 0. And we're going to do our inverse operation steps all the way down to get x back by itself. The only hitch is that when you are taking the square root, you've got to write it twice, once for the positive, once for the negative. All right, so let's try a couple more. Okay, so make your y equal 0. And if it makes you more comfortable, you can always put the 0 on the right side of the equation. It doesn't matter either way. So it can be written like this. Or you can flip sides. It's not going to change anything. And the only reason you don't have to change all the signs is because you are actually moving everything. So if you move everything from one side of an equation, and you're basically flipping sides, all of your signs end up staying the same. It's the only exception to that rule about when you move something past an equals, because you can say that a equals 3 and 3 equals a. You're just flip-flopping the sides. Okay, so we made y equals 0, so now we're going to start doing our steps. The first thing I need to do is add 6 to both sides. So 1/2 x minus 4 squared. 6 plus 6, 0 plus 6. Same thing on both sides. That's a 0 pair, so it's canceled. And I now have 6 on the right. So I'm adding or subtracting first. In this case, I do have a fraction, right? And we do not divide by fractions. So I need to multiply by the reciprocal of a half. So the reciprocal of a half is 2. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. And again, all that's going to do is cancel out the 1/2 for me, right? It's not going to affect what's in the parentheses because 1/2 times 2 is just 1. It's gone. So I have x minus 4 squared equals 12. Okay, so now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. Now that is going to give me a decimal. Please round your answer to 1 decimal. Okay, so I'm going to square root both sides. And let me grab my calculator real quick. And the square root of 12 is 3.5, rounded to 1 decimal. Okay, so I'm going to have x minus 4 equals 3.5. And then I'm going to have x minus 4 equals negative 3.5. Okay, so now I need to add 4 to both sides of the equation so that I can finish simplifying. So minus 4 plus 4. And minus 4 plus 4. And again, it's a very good idea to always show your work because if you mess up somewhere, you can go back and look at your steps and see what maybe you forgot or did wrong. So that's going to be x is equal to 7.5 and x is going to equal 0.5. Okay, so square root and then parentheses. All right, so let's try one more. Okay, so same deal. Start by making your y equal 0. And again, if you prefer, you can put the 0 on the right-hand side of the equation. It does not matter. Okay, so notice there's nothing that's been added or subtracted, so I actually can skip, adding or subtracting. And I can move straight to multiplying or dividing because there's just nothing on the right-hand side to deal with. So I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by -3. And 0 divided by -3 is still 0. That cancels that -3 out very nicely. Okay, so now I have to take the square root. Now, I included this problem for a specific reason. You can get zeros like this. It does happen. Okay, so because the square root of 0 is just 0. So you don't actually have to write this one twice. You can, but there's no such thing as positive and negative 0. It's neutral. What basically is going to happen is that you're going to get the same answer twice. Okay, so you're going to subtract 4, and you're going to get x equals -4 twice. And that's fine. That can actually happen. It just means in this case, you've only got one x-intercept. And that means that the graph is actually sitting, the vertex of it is actually sitting on the x-axis. And if we were to graph this, the vertex would be here, right? Because this is vertex form. The vertex would be -4, 0, because there's nothing there. And then it would be going down because of the -3. So it is possible for this to happen where you only get one x-intercept because that is your vertex. So I did want to include one that would go like that. So, yep, this is how you solve vertex form. All right, so next on our list is going to be completing the square, and I will talk to you later.